Zola Jesus Arkhon album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from Zola Jesus. She is an Arizona-based singer and songwriter, and for a while she's been a modern favorite of mine as somebody who has sort of enjoyed the darker, weirder side of singer-songwriters. Now, her debut album, 2009's The Spoils, I had a lot of thoughts on it. I saw that Sacred Bones logo and I heard her sound and I got really excited for an artist that I was going to just end up enjoying and loving and obsessing over. And on one hand, her chilling performances and the noisy, very harsh sound of the record excited me quite a bit. But I, for one, was sort of not crazy about the DIY approach to the production on this album. Also, there were some consistency issues. For my liking, it was the drama and the sheer force of her follow-up Stridulum that really got me hooked to her sound. This was very intense, well-performed, and well-produced gothic pop, and I loved that. And I do have to admit, I did kind of fall off around the time of Canadas for a while. I just felt like with her last work, Zola made these huge shoes for herself to fill, and she really wasn't doing that. And her Taiga album, honestly, I thought the charisma that she brought to the table was really, refreshing. The production sounded great too, but her departure from the gothic pop of her early work and a more focus on just classic synth pop just really didn't sit with me very well. Now, the last time that we heard from her in a full-length capacity, I was really impressed. I thought she bounced back big with her biggest and best album with Okovi. Start to finish, these were some of her best tunes. I thought she had really come up with a great medium for her sound. Even the Okovi auditions that were, put out about a year later were really impressive in my book. Now, these new singles leading up to this album show another departure for Zola Jesus. They are much more vast and much more spacious and cinematic even, for better and for worse. And you know what, I'm just going to say it, there's a lot of really great material on here. This album starts off with Lost. I think it's one of the best tracks here. It is easily one of the most intense and looming tracks on this entire album. I love the sampled whispers. They really get under my skin, as well as the tribal drums on this track. They are intense. Not only that, but Zola's very chilling performance on this track is just what the doctor ordered. I think it's just a great medium all around. I would even go as far as to say it's my favorite track here. There's just an intensity to this track that makes me not able to look away. This is a great sound for Zola Jesus. Not only that, but it's like the next logical leap after Okovi. The Fall, once again, has a lot of drama to it, as well as Zola's most over-the-top vocal performance. She honestly doesn't really let loose like this a lot, and I'd like to hear more of it. It's really good, though. I love the very patient pianos to this track, also the synths that sound directly ripped out of the original Suspiria. It's much more big and boisterous from Zola, but it actually works quite a bit. It may not be your thing, though, and I do understand that. We'll get to it. Into the Wild is really cool as well. This track just sounds destined to be on the soundtrack of some dark fantasy that A24 would put out. I love the ambient sounds to this track and the freaking atmosphere. That, alongside of one of the most off-kilter performances that I've heard from her in a while, and an instrumental that is really hard to place, it's pretty mesmerizing. It is a track that is really rewarding with more listens. Now, I will say this, though. Leading up to this album, I thought a lot of the singles were good, but with one or two of them, I worried that this album would be a little bit much, and in my opinion, it is a little bit much. Undertow is a little on the more whimsical side. It's one of the softer tunes here. I have to admit, though, I liked it at first as a single quite a bit, but it has lessened on me. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the worst track here or anything, but leading up to this album, like I said, I worried that there would be parts where this new direction of hers would be a little much, and this was definitely a deciding factor in that thought. I thought with Okovi, she really had just nailed her sound perfectly and put out her best set of tunes. This is so far from that. It's a shame because we get the big chorus here. We get her vocals, which are gigantic. Everything else, though, is a little much. At the end of the day, I'd kind of rather hear her singing this track over some weird Darkwave beats. Then we get Dead and Gone. At this point, it's like in one ear, out the other. I mean, Zola's heart is in the right place. Her vocals, for sure, are really impressive. Her vocals on this whole album are incredibly heartfelt and emotional. But this track otherwise is a little overblown. When I say this album is a little bit much, right here, baby. I hear this, and once again, I wish you would just go back to basics, get a little darker and edgier. And Zola saved some of the least interesting tracks for late in this album. Take, for example, Fall. It's moments like this that really lose me. I mean, there's once again some pretty cool elements to it. Love the synth work on here. It sounds ready and primed for the new season of Stranger Things, but I mean that in the best way. But everything else about this track is pretty bland and straightforward and overblown by how little is going on here. And that's all getting around the fact that the songwriting here isn't that good. And Ephemera really doesn't do much for me either. And it's a shame because, once again, her vocals are staggering, but everything else around her really falls flat. The instrumental here is just a meandering mess that goes nowhere, and it's a shame because she sounds so focused. It's everything else around her that just sounds ugly. It's far from bad, though. It's not the worst thing Zola's put out. Sewn is really good. This is one of the grisliest tracks here, and the return of the drama on this track is pretty staggering. I mean, I know that she could put out a track like this, but with some of the weaker moments here, I almost forgot. The pacing here, the looming atmosphere of it all, the synth work, once again, is pretty flawless. There's a lot of great elements going into this track. This is a great medium for this album all around. There's just a great sound for Zola. Mostly because, once again, it's the next logical step for her. It has the grandiosity and the vastness of most of this album, but it has the bite of her old material. I think it's the best deep cut here. It's pretty damn mesmerizing. And as far as a true blue ballad goes, look no further for Desire. Honestly, I thought this track was going to lessen on me, but I still think it's beautiful. It's one of the lightest tracks here, but it remains just as huge with just how dramatic and intense this track gets. And it may be soft and beautiful, but it never really sounds safe either, if that makes sense. And listen, I don't know how many actual ballads I could take from Zola Jesus, but I'm glad that she really knocked it out of the park with this one. Her vocal performance, once again, wow. And Do That Anymore is a really great finale. Coming off a few tracks that quite frankly put me to sleep, this is one of the most interesting tunes here. Between the crunchy synths that we get here, this incredibly sense of dread that just seems to be all around this track, the vastness once again, the drama. It's so visual and a sound that I just want to hear more of from Zola Jesus. It's a stunning finale. She just sounds so larger than life here, in control of this sound. It's really great. This album isn't the worst thing that she's put out, but I can't help but feel a little disappointed. I mean, listening to the singles leading up to it, it was obvious she was going for a much more dramatic and vast and visual sound, and that I have no problem with. My only issue with this album is it's a little much. It's a little bit too much of a departure at times. And yeah, the drama, the cinematic vibes, it's all fantastic. And there's a lot of great elements to this album. I love the synth work more often than not. The production's really very vast and pretty tense usually. And her vocals are some of her best. But when this album goes downhill, it goes downhill pretty fast, especially in the lighter side of things. I just wish she mixed it up a little bit more, maybe didn't take such a big leap. Because the sad fact is, for me at least, it's a little much. I'm feeling a very strong 6 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, friends, have a great day.